This is the Texas Tinfoil Podcast.
Mogley here. I have my co-host today, as you can see. Texas, where you at, bud?
Right here, man.
Also, we got another co-host that's going to be joining us. Yeti, you around?
Yeah.
He is. All right. So we are now involved in Vent 4. Vent 4, let's get into it. Let's get into the good old conspiracy tinfoil hat, as they might say. Actually, let's go into the rabbit hole, should we say? Not rabbit hole.
We can do that. But I think it's proper to set the stage. Most people have probably never even heard of Operation Paperclip. The older people have, of course, but like people that are listening now, the newer generations probably have not.
Right.
And they're probably completely not their fault, but they probably just don't know a lot about it. Operation Paperclip, what it was, it originally started out as Operation Overcast, right? To make a very, very long story short, this happened near the end of World War II on the American side. And Russia has already broken the stalemate, and they're now moving into the German-occupied lands towards actual Germany proper. America and the rest of the allies on the Western Front have broken the lines, taken back most of France after landing in Normandy and everywhere else along the beachheads, have now established supply lines, and they're now pushing back toward the German proper lines on the western bank. So now we've got Germany locked in a two-front war. These guys are taking them as POWs.
They're moving.
Right. They're taking as POWs. And before the war is over, America feels that they are on the precipice of victory. The MI6 for Britain feels the same way. The Soviets version of their secret service is, the KGB. They're like, look, we got to start working out. Everybody at this point knows that Hitler is done. So now the conspiracy is we need to take all that we can for our own countries. Not only is this going to be considered reparations for bringing us into this war, but it will also prevent a future war between whatever countries are involved, and either the losers, like at the very end of World War I, Germany rose back up and did what they did, or maybe any of the allies happen to turn on each other. And and just so we're clear, this is not covered working on the Manhattan Project or the atomic bomb. For you guys that are not sure what the Manhattan Project is, or the nuclear projects on the Russian side, or anyone else. This is just strictly Operation Paperclip is just strictly bringing scientists and technicians, virologists, like pretty much all of the wealth of knowledge and information that is inside of Nazi Germany, bringing that, extracting those people and that intelligence and paperwork back to the home country. The only problem with that is these guys are Nazis. What did the Nazis do? A lot of terrible shit, right? Not all of them are directly involved or directly responsible, for sure. But if you're at war with these people and they're responsible for your brothers, dads, uncles, whoever, not coming home, the sentiment toward the Nazis was not very great, right? So the conspiracy is this. We need to do all of this stuff, keep it away from the public, or minimize public exposure to it as much as possible, and use all of the talents that we're getting from these Nazis, get all the talent for us to build up our infrastructure to be greater than everybody else. Because even though Great Britain was an ally to the United States, they wanted to do the same thing. The Russians, who are technically allies to the West, wanted to do the same thing.
I mean, it was just crazy, bro. Like, if you really think about it, these guys, I get that we're trying to get, the intelligence part, rockets, medicines, all that stuff, man. But I'm like blown away. When I started reading about this, I'm like super blown. I'm going into a rabbit, not just a rabbit hole, but I'm going deep. It's like Alice in Wonderland style, dude. Like, you go deep into it and you're like, oh my God, all the stuff that we use today is because of these people. But
right.
the what makes it which is good, but what makes it so fucking horrible, man, is like, oh my God, these guys are experimented on people for these, like these certain, vaccines, certain things. And, it's good for us. But at the same time, how it came about, you're like, oh my God, like what is going on, bro? It's nuts.
And this is, everybody always associates these terrible experiments, human experimentation, right, with the Nazis. That's like, those two things go together because you immediately think of Auschwitz and Ravenbrook and several others, but they weren't the only ones. Later, we will do another side, but this will be on the Pacific Theater. It'll cover the Unit 731, which is what the Japanese were responsible for. The Imperial Japanese, what they were responsible for in terms of human experimentation and all the atrocities that happened there as well. Now, let's be open about it. The Germans, once the Third Reich fell, they officially apologized for everything the Third Reich did. It was a big thing. They were like, look, sorry, like it's shitty what happened. No one's hiding it. We're sorry about it.
I'm like, dude.
On the other side, Unit 731, which was like a Japanese biological weapons training and experimentations and all this stuff, Japan never apologized.
You mentioned the Third Reich, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what tripped me out the most when I read the whole thing, dude, was Dr. Walter Schreiber.
Yes.
This guy was a surgeon. This dude was a surgeon general for the Third Reich, bro, and we brought him over to America. And this guy was in charge of the vaccine programs. It wasn't until way later, not to cut you off, but it wasn't until way later that those crimes were just brought up to the surface by independent researchers. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah. You know what's so crazy? He was probably the only Nazi that was actually outed. And the only reason why he was outed was because an investigator at the Nuremberg trials, recognized him. And that's how he got out. So he was outed. But not only that, but he had to leave. And he left to Argentina, just to live out the rest of his day because, oh my God, dude, like, could you imagine you're one of the investigators leading this thing and you're trying to find certain people in this like big list of all the people that came around and did all this stuff, man. And when
that are responsible for all the atrocities.
And could you imagine you're sitting there as the investigator and you're just chilling and then you just kind of look over and say, oh my God, is that Dr. Walter Schreiber? What is he doing here? What is going on?
And when he was brought over, the American intelligence community had really suppressed, not just for him, but for many people, they had suppressed and kind of whitewashed. All right, so let's get into this proper. We already laid the groundwork. What happened in Operation Paperclip, it's the new name for Operation Overcast. Operation Overcast was in the very beginning of 1945 in February. All right. So there was a team called T-Force, right? It was set up by all the allies on the Western Front, and they were going through and taking all that they could. They were looking for specific people and specific equipment, unfired rockets, unfired missiles, anything that the Germans left behind and that was not able to be destroyed. Scientists and all these other people were captured, all brought into POW camps, interrogated, all that mess. T-Force was responsible for this stuff. Now, down the road, a lot of these scientists that were captured, that were debriefed, they were held in this place called they called this Camp Dustbin, which it's a whole nother deal. It started out in Paris, and then they ended up moving it to Frankfurt. It was actually in a real castle. It was Kreuzberg Castle in Frankfurt, and they did all their interrogations and stuff there. So the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they set up a secret recruitment program. That was what Operation Overcast was. That happened in July of that year. So from February to July, they're collecting everybody, and they're weeding these people who claim to be this, that are not, who are saying they're not involved, but they're heavily involved. Like they're just trying to clear their names because rats on a sinking ship, right? They're just trying to get the fuck out of there. It's at the very beginning of the fall of Germany. So everybody's trying to get their shit, and they're trying to find a way to get out of what's to come, which is the Nuremberg trials, right? Because they know they're gonna hang for it. So the original reason for Operation Overcast was to not only to take the best scientists and information, patents, designs, everything, intellectual properties. We'll sum it up as that. Not only to take them, but the techs that worked on it and that know it, to bring them over again to bolster the American war machine, so that we're not scrambling for the next big conflict that may be around the corner, right? Because World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars, and it didn't happen. So anyway,
I mean, we're still expecting a World War III soon, but
yeah, we're on the precipice of that right now. You know what I mean?
Right now, we're probably going more through a civil war. We're about to.
No, I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but there is a lot of unrest going on right now.
True.
That's the way I would describe that. So the Ordnance Corps changed the name of it in November because not only did certain people that were involved leak out some stuff, whether it be intentional or accidental, media coverage and everybody else, probing journalists and them, uncovered what was going on, and they made a big stink about it in Europe. And so they changed the name and changed the location. The Ordnance Corps ended up changing it to Operation Paperclip. So the scientists and technicians and people that actually were verified to be who they said they were, they would, not always, but they would attach a photo of that person if possible inside of this manila envelope. They would attach their dossier explaining who they are and all their information, a photo, and they would put a paperclip on it. These people were the ones that were more or less vetted to be taken. These guys they're cleared. They're going to be part of this program. So even if they were supposed to stand trial in Nuremberg, if they had that paperclip, they were free. They were clear. The Americans were taking them. These guys are considered spoils of war, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, think about it, man. If I was put in that same situation, I think I would grab some people too. Not trying to just say like, hey, I'm saying it's okay to bring these people who have done atrocities. I'm not saying that, but when you really think about it, as horrible as it sounds, it's more of the intelligence part that everybody's trying to get. It would be a waste to kill somebody when they have intelligence. And I'm not saying in no way, shape, or form that it's okay to fucking, bring people up and not, get them their accountability on what they did. But as far as the research goes and everything, that's like stuff that you would want to try to have,
And at the same time, you have a nation who's saying, why are we going to import fascism and people who are
right?
The media spun them up as like bloodthirsty savages. I'll just go that far to say that these guys were the worst of the worst, right? Because you have to spin up the war machine and you have to get the American people behind you. So now the worst of the worst are now going to be collected up and brought back into America. So you have two lines of thinking. You have the nationalists here that are like, no, they don't belong here. National security is paramount. Why are we importing this? And number two, you have, the next war could be around the corner. If we don't take them, the Soviets will. And now that Nazi Germany is no longer a threat, somebody else will be a threat, and we will not be prepared for whatever that threat is. So you have two lines of thought, and these two competed during the year 1944, 45, 46. This went on for a little while. Even Harry Truman, our president at the time, Eisenhower wasn't in yet. Truman said, we can sign over, former Nazi scientists or members, so long as they were not vehement Nazi party members. They could be German, but not Nazis, like not outright Nazis. Couldn't have any involvement in these things. They couldn't be SS members. They couldn't. He had like a small list of like exceptions. Like they could be brought in unless. And here are the few things that they should fit. And here's a list of things that they should not. And the things that they should not is fucking huge. But the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the guys who worked on all this, they get the conspiracy hat on again, guys.
Oh god, here we go.
Here's a little thing. If you don't know, they told Truman to go fuck himself. Not literally, but they just said, "Yeah, we don't care about that. We're gonna bring in the people we know we need to bring in, and fuck it, we don't care." That was their line of thinking of military-industrial complex shit. We have to be ahead of the Russians. This is now the new scare that's popping up. The Russians, because the Russians are doing the same thing that we're doing now. So, like the Nazis that were taken by the Russians, by the Soviets, they took 2,200 Nazis and specialists and technicians and their families, which totaled more than 6,000 people. They showed up and they took everybody in one night in October. Just said, "Here's your little fucking paper. You're conscripted, and we're taking you." Like there was not really a whole lot of debate about it. There were a few people that escaped from Soviet, I guess it would be custody, would be the best way to put that,
right,
and defected to the American side and explained to them how that night went down and what happened, where they literally came in with machine guns and said, "You're coming with us. Grab all of your intimate personal belongings and all of your research. We're leaving." That's kind of how that went. And it was not like a.
It wasn't like us where we're all settled about it. Yeah, we're gonna do this for you. Here's some paperwork.
Yeah, they actually, the Americans and the British, they both said, "Hey, here's what
we're gonna do.
Here's a little slip saying, pack light, get your intimate things, and you have until this date to be here." And
the Russians went all savage on them, huh? Yeah. They just brought guns and said, "Hurry up and get your shit and let's go, bro."
You got to remember, from the Russian side, man, they've lost millions of people at this point, so they are not fans of Nazis as it is. So,
but at the same time, they're the ones who killed their own people, anyways. Like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Stalin. I mean, communism, right? Okay. Anyway, so without getting super distracted into all the details, which is going to be hard to do because we're trying to cover all of this stuff at one time. But so the CIC, the Army's Counterintelligence Corps,
who was the colonel that was looking for all these scientists? Remember, there was like a list, but there was this one colonel.
Okay, so
remember that?
Yeah, so Ossenberg, who was in charge of tracking down, locating some of the most important key members in the Nazi Party, inside of Nazi Germany. He had a list of like people that were scientists in terms of biology, aeronautics, missile design and missile techs, Air Force, like the Luftwaffe, all these different people who were somebody.
Even
right?
the biochems too and everything.
Yeah, people in biology, virology, all these guys. I want to say he was a Polish scientist. Anyway, he found it in a bathroom, like in the toilet. Either someone was hiding it or someone ripped it up and was throwing it away. I don't know. But he ended up finding it in a toilet, took it out and recognized some of the names and what was going on, the way it was organized, took the pieces, kept them, and then ended up passing this along to MI6, which is British Secret Intelligence. They passed it on to the CIC, the Army's counterintelligence, and the rest of the apparatus in the United States military and all the intelligence into operations they had there, and their OSS got it and a bunch of these other guys. So
that makes sense. I see now. Okay, that makes sense a lot. Like,
yeah,
I've read some stuff, but that makes sense. All this stuff now that you're saying all that and the way you're saying, It makes a lot of sense now.
But
now I'm understanding.
but
I was
the
like,
only problem with that is all the guys that Hitler wanted to bring back and bring in that were on that list were certified Nazis, meaning they had absolutely zero issues with the ideology. We need to find these guys, and if they are inside of occupied German like the land that they're occupying, when we push them back, we need to find them. If they're in POW camps, we need to find them. No matter where they are, we got to get these guys on this list. Werner von Braun was one of the top guys on their list.
Von Braun.
Yeah, von Braun, the guy.
This is one of the ones that puts the whole paperclip into perspective here.
Inside of the Nazi party, he was responsible for the V2 rocket. The V2 rocket was what they were using to launch from German or Nazi-occupied territory inside of Europe, launching these missiles into Britain. And that's where all these rocket attacks were happening. They were taking out buildings, killing all these civilians. Like, I think all in all, like 80,000 people lost their lives in the rocket.
Didn't they shoot it right there, like in a movie theater, and that's how this incident happened, right? Because the V2 rocket is a ballistic rocket. That's basically what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a missile. They're shooting fucking rockets. Like the Americans,
crazy,
we weren't using rockets to that scale at the time. I don't believe.
No,
So
man.
These guys were breaking new ground. This is like, you got to remember, this is around the same time Oppenheimer. If you watched the movie or read the book or know anything about him, this is during what everyone considers to be the golden age of physics, because this is right before the nuclear bomb. This is right before.
Oh yeah, before we bombed Hiroshima.
Einstein was still around. You still had a bunch of these other influential members in the science community. So
I was gonna say Mark Twain for some reason. I don't know why.
So we got
Paperclip. Like I said, there is a lot. If you read up on this, like I said, it's a rabbit hole. You're just gonna read and you're gonna find something else out, and then you're gonna move on to something else, and then you're gonna go back to what you were reading, and you're gonna be like, "Oh my god, this is so much stuff." But at the same time, it's like, I feel like it's a mind fuck, bro. Like it's like bad. Like you don't even know what the hell to do. Like,
and that's a little bit of a slap in the face to the people who were fighting. Now, granted, the prevalent thought at the end of the day was, it's not because we excused what they did, but because that war's over now. We can't do anything. We can't do anything to change that. But the new war is around the corner. There's tons of tech that the Army wanted, and I've got it written right here. Let's see.
Let me give you a little story on von Braun while he's looking at that.
Okay.
This guy was part of the Nazi Party from 1937 to 1945, right?
Yeah, when they ended.
But this dude, during development, was probably one of the most, like, how would I put this? This dude was a monster. I'm not gonna even lie. This dude is a monster. He would hang Jews, man. He would hang 5 Jews in the front for being slow in production.
He would hang the 5 slowest Jews outside of his factory when they
just to prove a point to hurry up
when they were working on the V2 rockets. Yes,
this dude was sorry. Like he was a piece of shit. He was a piece, bro. He was a piece. So this dude he's got a lot of kills under his belt when it comes to Jews, man.
Well,
like it was.
I'm not saying he killed those people directly. I won't go that far.
Well, I said he's involved because he's the one who let it happen. He told people to do this.
He not only that, but of course, everything they did was all made out of slave labor. Everything the Third Reich made was, well, not everything. The vast majority of things that were made with slave labor. Third Reich, that's how they operated.
Bro, like this,
it's really hard to blame von Braun for that, for the slave labor part, because that's how Nazi Germany operated. But for the picking the 5 slowest people and having them strung up, maybe he's culpable for that.
I mean, you think about it, bro. Like Really?
That was their way of motivating everybody else. Hey,
Their
unless
motivation.
you want to get strung up here, I suggest you work harder, right? And
But
I don't
I
know
mean,
if all of the depictions of the Nazis are really true or
but
some.
I will tell you this: if he was still alive today, I guarantee you he would be charged for his war crimes for sure.
Yeah, he would be charged for sure.
Because
There's not really any debate on that. It's just
I'm just tripping out. Like I'm thinking about this. Like, dang, if all these guys were alive today, they would be charged heavily with their war crimes. There's still Nazis getting found and getting charged for their war crimes still. I
the
mean,
last.
I don't know how good that's going to do because they're like 90, almost 100 years old. But
I was about to say the last surviving Nazi member that was found here in the U.S. was actually taken for trial for his war crimes. He was 91, and that was under the Trump administration. He was thrown out, sent back to Germany to stand trial. So that was something. So they're still going on, and that's not including probably the thousands of them or tens of thousands of them that are in Chile and Argentina as well.
for sure.
A lot of them escape that way. But I feel like we're kind of sliding off topic little by little because again, everything's tied in together. So to try to stay concise on it, what they were specifically looking for, the initial priorities are advanced tech such as the V2 rocket and V2 rocket schematics, any technology having to do with that. The Germans were the first to use jets and rocket aircraft. These are our enemies that have these things, so now we want these things. And they worked on that. They were working on infrared technology, synthetic rubbers, oil catalyst, armored equipment and design, and both light and heavy armor equipment designs. Field radios, which the Signal Corps was like all about that.
Right.
Let's see. They also designed. They had certain field radio antenna designs that were interesting that they wanted. They had secret writing chemicals that they used for their spies and codes and everything else. They did have. You do remember that they were using encryption until I believe it was the British that broke it, but using the Enigma machine. But that was no longer what they needed because they already figured out how to break that code. But they still wanted things for their super secret squirrel shit. So they were taking all of that. They wanted anything having to do with research, having to do with aeromedicine, which is having to do with flying in the atmosphere, how to take care of people at high speeds, people at high altitudes, so that way their pilots would survive these things. The Nazis experimented on people. There's no way around it. That's how they're able to obtain that information, and they wanted all of that information. So no way to actually test for that stuff without actually going that far. So America wanted it. They wanted their tech and redesign on the gliders and their naval equipment. So that's just a small list of some of the things that the military was looking for. So it sounds like a big laundry list because the Nazis were busy. They were busy people. And the total technicians and machinery taken by the U.S. military totals close to $10 billion when patents and industrial processes are combined with the technicians. Von Braun, back to him, he was responsible for that stuff. So he was considered indispensable by the Nazis and considered indispensable by the Americans. In other words, they didn't want to get rid of him because of what he had. Toward the very end of the war, and they were bringing all the technicians into the German interior, they had von Braun's team, who was supposed to be working on totally new tech, on a way they could win this war. Hitler ended up becoming pretty paranoid by this time. You know, everything's collapsing in around him. The German people are now seeing firsthand the horrors of war, moving closer to their borders. Obviously, it's a big deal. So what did he decide to do? He tells the SS, who is the most loyal to him, take these guys, you're going to take them to this area. I believe it was like in Bavaria somewhere, and you guys are going to watch over them, and that way they'll be hidden away while they're working on this new tech, and they're working on whatever it is that he's assigned for them to do. So von Braun, who's aware of what the SS will do, which is common practice, instead of giving up this information to the allies who are pushing forward into this occupied territory, we kill all the scientists, destroy all their paperwork, and deny the enemies coming in any of this. Von Braun, being a junior SS officer himself, kind of had an idea of this: we're in danger here, guys. No matter how indispensable we are, if we're going to lose the war, we're no longer indispensable. So while his team was being moved down there, him and a few of his closest friends in that team went and hit a bunch of these V2 rocket and propulsion paperwork, all this data, research, schematics. They hid all this stuff in these mines that were close by. They hid all this stuff, and he convinced some of the people who were in the SS that kind of were familiar with him to spread them out inside of the village. They would be more effective in different areas and working together that way. So if one or two houses got hit by let's say artillery, they wouldn't lose everything. The SS agreed. They let them split up, and by doing so, von Braun had specifically told members of his team, as soon as the Americans get close, we are going to defect. Let me do the talking, because von Braun was a salesman, right? He was very good at selling his capabilities and himself, and that's exactly what he did. When the Americans rolled up and took over the area, von Braun found the first opportunity he had to slip out of the people that were supposed to be guarding him and the rest of his team. The team slipped out unnoticed, surrendered to the Americans, and then they told the Americans, hey, we are indispensable because my name is Warner von Braun, and I've got all the tech, I've got all the research, I got everything. You get all of my team out, everyone gets out, I will show you where the tech and everything is. You know what I mean? A little bargaining chip, right? He's not exactly stupid. So it's exactly what happens. And he was specifically somebody that they were interested in because we were looking at increasing our missile capabilities and our rockets and everything that they had, we wanted, and we wanted it better. So initially when they brought him over, he was integrated, but he was not at all a leader. He was just integrated only because they didn't want any of the Nazis brought in to just be in top positions above the Americans. That doesn't look good and is demoralizing to the American scientists here. So they wanted to integrate them. And then von Braun also mentioned that, hey, if you guys are doing that to us here, I'm sure you're familiar that the Russians are doing the same thing. We need to fucking do this now. We need to get past all this stuff. You need to stop suppressing us and just taking bits of our knowledge. We need to be fully integrated so that way we can get this done. And he sold himself to the government several times on that idea of just let me be in charge, let me run the show, and I'll bring you results, because that's exactly what the structure was in the Nazi regime. You were given a task and you had to sell yourself on being the guy to do it. That would gain you favor. That would gain you, a little bit of, clout in the regime. So that way you can do what you have to do. As long as you got the results, you're A-okay, and it only made you look better down the road. He also warned of the Soviets, who in his mind, he believed the next step was going to be rockets and missiles. The next step, he said, would be space, because that was what the Nazis were looking at advancing toward at the end of the war. They wanted to send someone to space when he was working on the rockets. They dismissed him initially, and after working inside of the military for all these years, from the late 40s all the way to the 50s, when Sputnik was launched. After Sputnik, go ahead, Mogley.
Oh no, I'm just saying. I was listening. I was like, whoa, like.
Now, to be honest, it could have been a lucky guess, but maybe that is the next step that makes logical sense of, hey, if the highest we can get is the air, the next step is space. What can we do in space?
Could you imagine? I wonder if like they had their little like talks, even though they had some Nazis from, Russia, right? They had some of them, and then our Nazis here from the Americas. I wonder if they actually kept in touch with each other just to try to,
That
see.
that's a good question, but I know that they were not. The reason I say I know that was because when they were in America, they were only on military bases and they were restricted heavily as to what they can do and what communications were going in and out. The president said, "Fuck it, von Braun, you're going to be in charge. And you're going to be the director in a limited capacity. You're not going to just fucking what you say goes, but we're going to do this, but we're going to do it in a certain way. But you will be running the show now, and this is how it's going to go down." And they beefed up all the science, all the tech that they could do by giving them tons of funding now. They're working on rockets to escape the atmosphere. So that ended up being, there was like several rockets that they worked on, and we can get into the details of all of it. But what it all ultimately ended at was a Saturn V rocket that he was the architect to. And that was used by NASA. NASA, of course, I'm pretty sure you guys are all aware of who NASA is, but the vast majority of people in NASA, of course, it was. They said the lead consultant was Werner von Braun. The first director was another Nazi, Debus. Mogley, you want to talk about Debus?
Oh, DeBose. So his name is Kirk DeBose. One thing about Kirk is he was von Braun's number 2.
Mm-hmm.
I know that he was excuse me, I'm going through my notes because there's so much on Kirk DeBose. God, my bad.
All right. Hey, bro, I feel you. I feel you.
There's so much on this guy, but here's the crazy thing about. Let me tell you something about these guys. These guys, when they were in their the Hitler youth camps and stuff, and growing up, if you look at each one of these guys, they have a wicked scar on their face. It was like a badge of honor, man. Like if you think they put like horsehair like to make it more profound and stuff.
And that goes before Hitler's rise to power.
Yeah, no, this was like pretty crazy. And
that was
and Kirk
Prussian.
And like Kirk, if you look at Kirk DeBus, he actually has a scar that goes like right here to right here. That's one thing. If you actually look, you'll see them. There's other ones. There's a lot of them. It's like a badge of honor. But Kirk DeBus, he's the right hand man. He's a rocket engineer, and he's also NASA's director. He's the director of NASA. This dude was he was actually a member of the SS as well. If you when you look at this guy's criteria,
same as von Braun, who was also a junior SS officer.
He was a SS officer. This guy, he was one of the first. He helped with the V weapons. Plus, he was also the V weapons. I can't even talk. Flight tester, test director. Oh my gosh! But he also did launches. The Saturn launch facilities as well. If you read into this dude, his resume is pretty good, solid. It's a solid resume from this guy too. He's not, even though he was von Braun's second dude. He's had his merits as well.
Yeah, in terms of being a technician and a scientist, they're all very well accomplished, which is what kept them in America.
He had 13 launches of the Saturn V as well that I know about. The rockets which were part of the Apollo moon landing. If the the Apollo landing program. Excuse me, because Dubose, when he was with Hitler, he was appointed as the V weapons flight test director at the time when they were engaging in the rocket research programs. It was, oh god, I can't pronounce this. Pinmundun, is that how you say it? Pinmundun?
I've got a list of names. I'll have to fucking look it up.
It's spelled P-E, like P-E-E-N-E-M umlaut U N-D-E N-D-E.
I'm not German, so sure. We'll go with that.
Doing all these NASA launches, I know he's done some pretty good stuff. I didn't put mostly my time into DeBose, but from what I have gathered, as far as like my notes, he was second. He was the second in command to von Braun. He was part of Operation Paperclip, and I know that in 1945 he was transferred to Fort Bliss, Texas, when he was under the special contract for the special employees of specialists, should we say? I say that with quotation marks because that's Operation Paperclip. God dang, see, I can't even talk. Paperclip. Jesus Christ, Paperclip. Oh man, I'm butchering today, bro.
See, Jupiter C is what they use to get the Explorer 1, our satellite, up into space.
Right.
The top 7: Werner von Braun. Let's see: Eric Neubert, Theodore Papel. Yes, I got them all right here. William Schulze, Edward Reese, which we'll get into. It's Eberhard Reese. Sorry, Eberhard Reese. We'll get into him as well. Wilhelm Jungert and Walter Svedetsky. That's again another name that I'm not at all familiar with pronouncing more than twice apparently on this paper. So after the Soviets launched Sputnik, the U.S. admitted that they were behind, admitted that the space race was on, and this is what we have to do. So they, of course, NASA's created and all this other stuff, and Debus or Debus, whatever however you pronounce that, is Debus, as I've heard it said before, Debus. But anyway, he is under the direction of von Braun. He is made the director of NASA and the guy who's overseeing all this. Von Braun first worked on the intermediate range ballistic missiles, which are the IRBMs for the Army. And then from that point forward, von Braun and his associates were incorporated into NASA, and they had one goal, and that goal was to work on space travel. That would be everything having to do with getting the people off the planet, into the atmosphere, into space, and then later from space to a celestial body such as the moon or any other planet. And then once that's been accomplished, to get that object back from whatever body in space, such as the moon, back to Earth safely. So those were the goals, right? That was the ladder he had to climb. So Kurt Dubois became the first director of NASA and launched operations, what Mogley just said. And then they worked together to design and launch of the Apollo program. Everybody knows after Jupiter and all the others, Jupiter is what I was saying earlier. That's what led to the Explorer 1 launch, and he was the chief architect of the Saturn V rocket as well. Von Braun was. So there's like a whole lot here, but just to kind of get all this stuff squared. All of that led to the first successful mission to put Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon. That is the official story. We can also get into the conspiracy that we never got to the moon and we never brought anybody back. Again, how true that is, we can argue. Because that's another. I'm glad I got my tinfoil hat on because that's another conspiracy that we made it to the moon, or we didn't make it to the moon. We will,
because
we will
the
get
Earth is flat as well. You know,
Yeti. Do you have anything to say about the Earth being flat?
because we
Yeti,
love flat Earth.
Yeti loves that the Earth is flat.
We love that flat Earth.
Yeah, okay. You find out y'all are pretty gay.
What do you mean, bro? What do you mean, bro?
He's so
If y'all
mad.
believe in
Look at
that,
him.
whoever believes
He
in
doesn't
that,
like
pretty gay.
Are you sure, bro?
We always gotta give him shit about the flat
Yeah.
Earth
So, like,
because he doesn't
Like that,
believe in that
Yeti,
at
you can
all.
tell Yeti's been pretty quiet for people that are just now listening in. Yeti's been pretty silent most of this conversation because, to be
I don't
fair,
talk.
to be fair, he's usually pretty quiet anyway. He'll usually throw some nonsense here and there, but start talking about flat Earth, and Yeti is no longer the quiet guy. He was going to be.
He's very passionate about his.
He's a very spirited young man when it comes to flat Earth. So he's not at all a fan of it. So it's
That and
hilarious.
we're riding behind a turtle.
Oh yeah,
That's
a turtle.
stupidest thing I ever heard in my life.
See, that's one of the later podcasts we will get into flat Earth or donut Earth or hollow
And I
Earth.
will be in on this.
The hollow.
Now Yeti, I was gonna say now Yeti, he has already been more than happy to offer his wisdom and insights on the Earth being flat. So Operation Paperclip had a bunch of people that were suspicious as hell. A bunch of them that may or may not have been involved. Some of them are believed to be very well heavily involved, but their slate was wiped clean in exchange for, again, bringing this technology and information over to us. So they decided we'll do that. It wasn't until the 50s that some of these people, of course, they weren't very young when they were brought here. They were already, ages vary, but they were already, 40, 50 years old right around that time getting here anyway. So most of them were pretty well on their way out in terms of age, right? Natural age.
Right.
And let's see, the only person I'm aware of, the first guy that went back was named George Rickey. He stood trial in Germany. He was accused of being involved in the use of
I'll be
the
right back.
excessive use, the deaths of, again, said slave labor. Nothing was ever proven. He was brought back to Germany. He stood trial, and after going through that lengthy process, he was acquitted. He was found not guilty of being directly involved or having direct control over those situations. So they let him go. Now, because he left America and went to Germany to do that, when he was done with trial and everything else that was involved, he did not come back to America. He just stayed in Germany. It happened to another man. Mogley brought his name up earlier, Walter Schreiber. Now Schreiber, he was a top Air Force medical scientist. Now, he was first, I'm going to say abducted because there's no other way to put that. He was first abducted by the Soviets. And after he was taken over and put into a camp there, he was under their custody, right? He escaped custody there, fled, and turned himself over to the Americans. Of course, this was already after the war. Right. And he was wanting to be with the Americans and not the Soviets due to the way the Soviets were reportedly treating everybody. And considering what the war was like for them on their side of the front, you can't really blame them. So he found refuge in the American care. They, again, lumped him in with a paperclip, and they ended up bringing him over to the U.S. Now, Mogley, what happened to Schreiber when he got here?
So, one thing about Schreiber, we all know that he was part of the Third Reich, right? But when he got here, now that he's a Surgeon General, which he later moved into the Air Force Base in the U.S. Um, the services as the Deputy General of the Third Reich, Dr. Kurt Bloom. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Dr. Kurt Bloom. No, it's Blum. I'm sorry, right? Blum. But he was also a guy that was involved in biological warfare research as well. So you got these two heavy hitters right here, and they're this is when nuclear and chemical warfare, biological warfare, these guys were into certain things, as far as as Walter Schreiber, this guy literally experimented on people.
He was accused of being involved with Ravenbrook, right?
Right.
Which is another infamous concentration camp.
But this guy would actually experiment on Jews. Like, for instance, think about it like this. What would happen if we got two twins together and sewed them together?
And that was
kind of. I'm just saying, like, stuff like that. I'm not saying that it happened, but I'm just making it like,
what he was responsible for was putting people in, like, what he was found responsible for was having to do with high altitude, such as putting people inside of pressurized tanks. He would depressurize them to simulate high altitude, and then would pressure it up quickly to see what the effects on the human body was. He was responsible for everything having to do with getting into upper atmosphere aerospace stuff.
Well, think about it like this too. He would also experiment like on other things, like vaccinations on people.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those vaccinations weren't like what you thought. It was probably poison, but he wanted to see what it would do to the human body. Would it cure a certain disease, or would it make it worse? Or could you imagine, what if your blood's just started blood started just coming out of every orifice of your body? I mean, could you imagine like being experimented on that? Like, if you're a guinea pig, basically, this dude would do it all. Like, this dude wasn't no saint either. You know what I mean?
So Operation Paperclip has gotten black eyes over the years of tons of these people that were brought over, and out of the 1,600 or so, maybe 100, I believe, tops were heavily suspected of war crimes or being involved with war crimes. Schreiber never actually faced trial, though.
No,
he was accused of all that, and what he did was, in exchange for being sent, instead of being sent to Germany to stand trial for it, he made a plea bargain with the American government and said, I will renounce my United States citizenship. I will no longer be in the United States. Allow me free travel. The United States said, okay, well, we'll give you a head start. And agreeing to that, again, this ties back further into the tinfoil hat conspiracy of, they knew what they were doing. They just gave them a pass, right? And they did. And guess where Schreiber ended up? When he left America, he went to Argentina.
Yep. Where he lived.
Where there were tons of other what? Nazi Germans. Yes. So, and there's still whole villages, like communities of Germans there in Argentina and Chile. In the mountains, it looks like a little slice of 1800s or 1900s Europe.
So here's a fun fact about Schreiber that most people trip out on. Even though this dude did these things, in May of 1943, he was headed for the third session of the advisory specialists of the armed forces, right? There was a confrontation there where Schreiber actually spoke out against human experimentation. Can you believe that? The guy who actually did the shit.
After being guilty, yeah. Then he stands up and says, hey, guys, this is not right. Yeah, that kind of brings Operation Paperclip to a close. So is the American government right for doing this? Are they wrong for doing this? I don't know. everybody, leave your opinions below if you got something to say. If you want to add to the subject, please do so. Again, there's a lot to chew on here. I just didn't want to make this thing go on for 5 hours, right?
Well, that's what we always do. We don't get someone to do our work for us.
I mean, if someone knows better than you, bring them in, right?
Better at.
Well, I guess so, dude. Right?
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believe.